Most owners think that buyers are evaluating their business, and that's true, they are. But they're also evaluating risk, and that's actually really what they're evaluating. And in fact, once a buyer decides that they're interested in your company, almost everything that happens next is about answering one question, which is, what could go wrong after we buy this business? One of the biggest areas that they're evaluating, which is a surprise to a lot of people, it's your leadership team. They want to know, can they run the company without you? And will your leadership team stay long enough to help protect the buyer's investment? In this video, I'll show you how buyers really evaluate leadership teams and where most owners underestimate the importance of management, and what you can do years before a sale to build buyer confidence and value. So one of the things that you want to understand when you're preparing to sell your business is that buyers are often looking for different things than what you might think they're looking for as a seller, but also all buyers are not the same, and they're not all looking at the same thing. In broad strokes, you have two kinds of buyers. You have what's called a financial buyer, and they're primarily interested in the financial performance of the business. They usually want it to be fairly easy to operate, fairly easy to run, and they want to be able to have confidence that it's going to keep financially performing after you're gone. The second kind of buyers is broadly called a strategic buyer, and they usually have some other kind of goal that they're trying to accomplish. Maybe they're very interested in your technology, or you help expand their vertical, or you're part of their supply chain, or there's some other motivation that they have that puts value into your business. The thing is, it's important to know that. Maybe I'll create another video about the different motivations of buyers, but for all of these buyers, or for most of them, I should say, it's going to be important to them to know that your leadership team is functioning well and that they can operate the business without you. They're going to want to know, they're going to ask two questions. Can this team run the business without the owner? And are they likely to stay, and for how long? So for example, if I'm being asked to evaluate a company for a potential buyer, one of the things that I will look for is the management team, and I'll look at how old are they. If they're all in their early 60s, there's a reasonable chance that this group of people doesn't plan on spending another 10 or 15 years with the company. On the other hand, if they're all in their 40s or 50s, they might. Now, you don't make a decision purely based off of the age of the team, but it is something that's part of the consideration. You'll also want to know what kind of incentive structures might be in place, or what's going on. Because if you buy the company and then you show up to operate things the next week and everybody turns in their notice, you're kind of stuck high and dry, and in some companies that might kill it right there. And so buyers are thinking from that perspective. You want to be aware of that as a seller and build the kind of leadership team that can withstand this sort of scrutiny. Common blind spots for sellers is underestimating the amount of scrutiny that you or the lender behind the buyer will put you through. Many people underestimate it, and it's a difficult process for a lot of folks. How much the team still depends on the founder or the owner of the company. Many owners think, oh, they can handle things, but they've never really tested that or found out. And so there's often dependency that's still frequently there. Sometimes the dependency is actually more psychological than skill-based. Everybody may know their jobs, but they're so used to, they've been trained for so long to defer to the owner for all the decisions that they really don't know how to make decisions themselves, and they don't know how to make them together as a group. Not having a retention strategy is a big piece of this. So there's lots of different ways to structure those. I'm not going to get into that in this video, but you want to think about a retention strategy, which often looks like some sort of incentive, often a financial incentive for people to stay for at least 6 months or a year or 18 months after the transition, so that they're motivated to stay, so that the buyer can have confidence that this group of people are likely to stay around. Any of those kinds of things, just loyalty to you as the seller. They may feel like, I don't want to work for someone else, and so they're going to follow you where you go next, or they're going to say, maybe this is just my time to retire. I don't feel like, breaking in a new boss. You just have to be aware of those things. Many buyers, particularly sophisticated buyers, are thinking about those things, and so you just need to be aware of that. If you're planning to sell your business in the next few years, don't wait until due diligence to discover the risks that a buyer is going to see. I'd like to encourage you to take my free Value Builder assessment. It will walk you through many of the operational and leadership as well as financial questions that buyers evaluate before making an offer. You'll find a link to that in the description below. Now, let's look at the conversation that buyers are actually having after they meet your leadership team. Here's what you want to have happen is after a buyer has come and talked to you and they've talked to your team, you want them to drive away from that conversation saying, I feel really good about this. And here's the things that will cause them to feel really good about this. It's going to be because they see that you have competent leadership that's not you, that the key functions in your business, which I often draw that finance and admin, sometimes they're combined, sometimes they're separated. Operations and sales are the key functions. You might have other ones like HR, you might have R&D. There might be other core functions in your business depending on the kind of business you're in. You might have an equipment fleet that you maintain. You might have a really strong logistics side depending on what you do, what kind of business you're in, whatever it is that you're in. These are the core ones that every single business has. And whatever ones are relevant to you, buyers are going to want to see competence in terms of leadership over each of these functions. They're going to want to see that the team can run the company and that it can perform without the owner being present. They're going to want to see that they can make decisions, even strategic decisions, in a leader's absence, or they intelligently contribute to those conversations. They're not just deferring everything to the wisdom of the owner. They're going to want to see that there's high morale, that these people seem excited to come to work, that they seem to look forward to being there, that there's a sense of company pride. They're going to look for those kinds of things. They're going to want to know that this person still wants to stay, that they still need a job, that they still have a career in front of them, that they still have aspirations that they want to pursue, that there's some kind of motivation for them to work and to hopefully to stay working at that company. That's where retention strategies like financial incentives, especially if they're contracted and they're guaranteed, that can be something that helps raise value because it raises confidence with a potential buyer. What you don't want is a potential buyer to come to the company and say, I feel a little nervous about this, right? Because the big thing buyers are evaluating, if they know what they're doing at all, is they're evaluating risk. And to what degree will value transfer from you to them, and to what degree can they perpetuate and grow that value? If everything runs through the owner, if all decisions run through the owner, that's going to cause some concern. If team defers to the owner for all decisions, that's going to cause concern. If there's low morale, if there's high turnover, if this group of people, of leaders, are near retirement, that's going to cause concern. If they're super loyal to the owner, maybe more than even loyal to the business, that's going to cause concern. That's a great thing to have, but you need to figure out how do we manage that, because what if they don't want to work for somebody else? Key person risk. If you've got a brainiac right here, or you've got some kind of wunderkind over here that can just rainmake all day long, then you have to figure out how do we make sure that person doesn't go away if they're a key part of our business. I was just talking to an owner the other day. One person is responsible for about 70% of the sales volume for that business. They think that person's great. A buyer is going to see that person as a massive risk. It's a key person, and somehow that risk has to be mitigated. Not by getting rid of the person, but making sure that that person's going to stick around long enough, or that they've taught their team their magical abilities so that the team can approximate what they're doing. It's just something that you need to pay attention to. The other thing is maybe you have functions that don't have clear ownership. Maybe you've got somebody at the company that's worked there for 20 years and they just sort of kind of do all these things. That's also going to create risk. Here's the reason why. Buyers want to know that when they come into your company, that they can open the recipe book for your company and they can figure out, okay, here's how sales works. These are the ingredients and the steps that you follow. Here's how ops work, ingredients and steps that you follow. They don't want to come into your company and have to try to figure it all out. If they feel like they have to do that, the likelihood is they won't buy. That's the most common scenario, significantly common. That's most businesses never sell. Common. The ones who do buy, that will decrease the value, and it'll create a situation where the buyer will want terms that will favor them and not you, because they're trying to mitigate risk. They're making good decisions when they do that. So what reduces the perception of risk to a buyer? That a business can run without depending on the owner. And so for that, I often recommend my vacation test. The ability to go away from the business, whether you take a vacation or a course or whatever you're doing, doesn't matter. Go away and go away frequently and start going away for longer amounts of time. All of that forces your business to have to operate without you. If everything stalls while you're gone and comes back to life when you come back, that's indicative of a problem that's going to hit value and possibly the salability of your company. But if you come back and things are still chugging along and maybe even grown, that's a positive sign. Knowledge should be transferable. We should know that people can teach others how to do this. So I often recommend to my clients, even if you've got a rock star salesperson, they should have some people on their team who may not be rock stars, but they're good. They're good hitters. They can get in there and I guess I'm mixing metaphors there, but they can get in there and make things happen. Same thing in ops and finance and administration, so that if this person is gone for some reason, they take a new job, they get sick, they retire, they get hit by a truck, whatever happens, everything doesn't collapse because their team can carry that weight and they can carry all or most of it and maybe even outperform. And as I said before, all these mission critical functions need to have its own leadership and its own management, which is competent. And again, this retention strategy. There has to be a belief or a confidence that the team will stay. There's different lengths of time. 6 months is often what's commonly looked for. They might look for 12 months. Oftentimes people understand you can't guarantee that someone's going to be around for 3 years. The buyer might not even want the entire team to be around for 3 years for various reasons. But there's often going to be a desire that they're going to be around for somewhere between 6 to 12 months is what you should expect. And that there's some kind of a way of, you can never guarantee it, but there's some kind of a way where it seems obvious to them, I feel comfortable that your team, your group of people are likely to stay after you move on or after the sale happens. That's a key part. It's something that I find many sellers overlook or don't consider in a sales process, is how closely a knowledgeable buyer will actually look at your leadership team. A great leadership team isn't valuable just because they're impressive. They're valuable because they reduce risk to the potential buyer. Buyers don't expect perfection, but they do expect something that gives them confidence. Confidence that the business can perform without you, that one key employee leaving won't cripple the company, and they want to know that every mission critical function in your company has capable leadership. They want confidence that the people who know the business best will stay long enough for a successful transition. The more uncertainty that you remove, the more confidence you create, and confidence is what buyers pay for. In this next video, we'll look at what happens when buyers start testing their assumptions during due diligence and why deals that seem certain can still fall apart. You'll want to check that out.